I was the most beautiful woman in the capital, yet by the time I turned 18, no man had come to propose marriage, all because I was a chatterbox, a glance that could capture hearts for 10,000 years, yet a mouth that repelled both dogs and men alike, watching me grow into an old maid with no prospects. My father was at his wit's end until he finally turned to the emperor for help. With a wave of his hand, the emperor betrothed me to a mute man. Mother said that when she was pregnant with me, she had dreamed several times of a lark perching by her window. She and father had agreed unanimously that their unborn child would surely be a daughter with a voice as clear and melodious as a lark's. Thus, even before I was born, they had named me G. Bailing, G. Lark. From a young age, I had displayed an astonishing talent for speech. While other children my age babbled like they had a stone in their mouths, I could already enunciate clearly a whole range of useful phrases. Father hungry *, mother thirsty *, need to pee *. Father had been immensely proud of this. Back then, his favorite pastime was to carry me around to visit his colleagues' homes. All those colleagues had one thing in common: they all had children roughly my age. As those kids stumbled over single words, I would call out crisply, "Uncle, granduncle, grandpa." Father would stroke the beard he had grown deliberately to look more dignified, chuckling, "My little lark is just such a clever, darling thing. Forgive her, she's far too precocious for her own good." But after I turned 3, father stopped carrying me around to visit people. Not because he didn't want to, but because he dared not. I was a young lady. After all, if word got out that I was a little chatterbox, it would reflect terribly on our family. The two of them had discussed that lark dream many times over the years. In the end, my father, well read as he was, put forward a bold hypothesis. "Wife," he said, "is it possible that each time the lark appeared in your dreams, it was a different one altogether?" I actually have very little memory of events before I turned 5 or 6. Thus, the following account is based on mother's recollections. Relayed through me, its veracity remains questionable, as the old saying goes. A child of 7 or 8 is a nuisance even to dogs, but in my case, that stage began as early as 3 or 4. Mother said this was no exaggeration, it was the unvarnished truth. Even dogs had come to detest me. Take Da Hay, the big black dog kept in the kitchen. After I had engaged it in several one-sided conversations, it would scurry away with its tail between its legs whenever it saw me approaching, while other children my age wore longevity locks or gold necklaces around their necks. I wore a small water pouch, talk too much, and you get thirsty easily. For those 2 years, our family of 3 had a very regular daily routine. Before the hour of weigh, 1 to 3 p.m., it was mother who suffered. Father left early for his official duties, and when he departed, I was still sound asleep. Mother said that whenever I wanted to find her, I never needed a maid to announce my arrival in advance, nor did she ever worry that the maids might mistreat me behind her back. Because I would tell her everything, down to the last detail, how many strands of hair she had lost while combing her hair that morning, how the maids could not even stop my chattering while feeding me. After the hour of weigh, it was father who suffered, because that was when he returned home. Back then, father's official position was not high, and he only had to attend to his duties for half a day each day. Before I was born, father would usually spend his free time in his study. After I was born, father and I would usually spend our time in his study together. Mother said that during the 2 years when he was teaching me my first characters, father had achieved that air of solemn maturity he had always desired without even needing to grow a beard. In the evenings, both husband and wife suffered together. I would regale father with every detail of how mother and I had spent our day while he was away. Then I would report to mother everything I and father had done in the study that afternoon. Grandmother came to the capital from our hometown, urging mother to give father another son, to give the couple some privacy. Grandmother even volunteered to take charge of me during her stay. That year, the old lady arrived with her hands in her pockets, utterly unaware of the formidable opponent she was about to face. I raised those 3 little rascals of my eldest sons without breaking a sweat. She declared, "A little thing like Linger will be a piece of cake." 1. No, I could handle 10 of her with my eyes closed. "Daughter-in-law, you and my second son just focus on making babies. Leave the rest to me." Less than half a month later, grandmother changed her tune. "You two had better take Linger back and raise her yourselves," she said hastily, after much thought. I've decided that our G family already has 3 heirs, that's more than enough, more than enough. Later, Uncle wrote to say that as soon as grandmother returned home, she had come down with a strange illness. She kept complaining of terrible headaches, which grew especially severe whenever someone spoke next to her. Looking back at mother's countless battles of wits with grandmother over the years, this was the first time she had routed her opponent without shedding a drop of blood, without lifting a single finger, all thanks to her secret weapon, me. For a fleeting moment, mother even allowed herself to think. Perhaps having a chatterbox for a daughter was not such a bad thing after all, but that fleeting thought vanished as quickly as smoke when the time came for me to attend school. My academic journey was fraught with obstacles. At most, I would last 3 days at a school, at the very least, half a day, before being sent home in disgrace. Whenever mother pressed the maids for the reason, their answer was always the same: "Master." Master would say one sentence up on the podium, and Miss would retort with 3 down below. By the end of the class, Miss had talked more than the master himself. Finally, mother slammed her palm down on the table and made a decision: no more school, we're not sending her back, ever. I refuse to believe that your father, a second-place winner in the imperial examination, cannot teach a mere child. Father, it just so happened that those years were a period of rapid advancement for father in his official career. Not only did he have to attend court every day, but his workload also increased dramatically. When he returned home in the evenings, he had to draft memorials to the throne and tutor me. It was no wonder he seemed to age overnight. Father was always left tongue-tied by my endless chatter. At such times, he would always gaze at me with tears glistening in his eyes, sighing with profound regret. "My daughter is as bright as ice and snow. This fills my heart with immense joy. Alas, such a pity, such a great pity, that she has to go and grow such a mouth." Mother and father had indeed tried their best to cover up my chattiness, but as the saying goes, paper can never wrap up fire. At a banquet, the daughter of generals deliberately ruined a dress that she had waited 3 whole months to get her hands on. Oh my goodness, I exclaimed loudly. I heard that General had to retire from the battlefield because he inherited a family condition that makes his hands tremble so badly he can no longer hold a sword. Sister, could you have inherited your father's ailment too? You're still so young. How utterly tragic, how heartbreaking. Why? Sister, why are you serving yourself food? Where are your maids? Don't they know their young lady is ill? Hurry up and attend to her at once. Can't you see her hands are shaking even more violently now? When the second Miss Huang's fiancé had an affair with her illegitimate half-sister and even wanted to take the latter as his secondary wife. I've truly seen everything now, I scoffed. Who knew there could be such shameless, heartless creatures in this world? How can those 2 adulterous wretches even have the audacity to show their faces in public? If I were them, I would hang myself from the nearest crooked tree without hesitation. When a scholar who had come to the capital to sit for the imperial examination fell head over heels in love with me at first sight and dared to stop me in the middle of the street. "This is harassment," I shrieked. "Blatant, unprovoked harassment. Have you finished memorizing all your books? Are you fully prepared for the examination? What, you haven't? Then what gives you the gall to show off your pitiful little talents in front of me? Young master, you have no family background to speak of, nor have you achieved any success in the imperial examinations. On what grounds do you think I would ever look twice at you? Because of that face of yours that's so ugly it makes me lose my appetite." Gradually, as I grew older, my reputation as a chatterbox spread far and wide alongside my fame as the most beautiful woman in the capital. Ordinary girls began receiving marriage proposals at 14 or 15 and married by 16 or 17, but I was nearly 19, and not a single suitor had crossed our threshold. Mother and father had even tried taking the initiative, but, Minister G, the other party would say awkwardly, "Your daughter is indeed breathtakingly beautiful, but that mouth of hers is simply too talkative." "Madam G," they would add, "the most beautiful woman in the capital is a rare gem. But my son is truly not fortunate enough to deserve her." I personally didn't mind in the least, but mother and father were so worried they began losing their hair. Mother suggested, "Why don't we go beg His Majesty to bestow a marriage upon her? Once the imperial edict is issued, they will have no choice but to accept it, whether they like it or not." Father thought this was a brilliant plan. After all, with a mouth like mine, I would never suffer any grievances in anyone's household, thus. The next day, father returned home with not only his official seal but also an imperial edict of betrothal. As it turned out, this marriage was actually a great honor for our family. My betrothed was named Xie Qingxian, a name that had been the talk of the town among the capital's official circles recently. At 23 years old, he was the only son of Duke Zhenghua and the late eldest princess, blessed with a profound affinity for Buddhism. He had been chosen by the renowned monk master Liaoran at a very young age and taken to study at a famous Buddhist temple in Jiangnan. When he finally returned to the capital, he had refused to live in the opulent duke's mansion, choosing instead to reside at the White Horse Temple on the outskirts of the city, a stay that had lasted 3 whole years. He lived an extremely reclusive life, rarely venturing out, making him a man whom few had the chance to meet. According to rumors that had leaked from the White Horse Temple, ever since Xie Qingxian had taken up residence there, no one had ever heard him speak a single word. He was, it seemed, a mute. This rumor had even received indirect confirmation from the emperor himself. "My dear minister," the emperor had chuckled, "tell me, isn't it a match made in heaven, one who talks too much, and one who does not talk at all?" With that, the emperor waved his hand and paired the two of us together. Father was overjoyed. First, he had fulfilled the task mother had entrusted to him. Second, a child who had grown up in such an ancient, revered temple must surely possess an excellent temperament. Mother was equally delighted. Duke Zhenghua had been a strikingly handsome man in his youth, and the eldest princess had been a woman of unparalleled grace and beauty. Their child could only be breathtakingly handsome. After a quick consultation, the two of them packed my bags and sent me off to the White Horse Temple to cultivate a relationship with my future husband. I had anticipated that news of the imperial betrothal would cause quite a stir in the capital's social circles, but I had never imagined that someone would move so quickly. I was sitting in the pavilion by the pond in the backyard of the White Horse Temple, waiting for the guiding monk to fetch Xie Qingxian. I hadn't even had time to warm the stone bench beneath me when a familiar voice rang out. Well, if it isn't Minister G's little lark sister," the woman drawled. "Sister has been rarely seen out and about these days. What brings you to White Horse Temple today? I heard your father had to beg the emperor to bestow a marriage upon you because no one else would have you. It's about time, isn't it, after dragging your feet for so many years? Sister's marriage has finally been settled at last." The speaker was Zhao Ning, the eldest daughter of General Zhuo, now married. If one were to rank the daughters of the capital's noble families in order of how much they hated me, Zhao Ning would undoubtedly top the list. She had already borne a grudge against me ever since I had publicly mocked her trembling hands. To make matters worse, the man she had married was none other than Xu Xianzu, the very scholar I had publicly rejected in the street years ago. Xu Xianzu had never been particularly talented, but he had been blessed with a lucky name. On the day of the imperial examination, his ancestors had apparently intervened from beyond the grave, allowing him to perform far beyond his usual abilities and pass with flying colors. He had never been one to attend to his official duties properly, always scheming and plotting ways to climb the ranks, and once again, his ancestors had looked out for him, helping him to secure a favorable marriage. It seemed that all the good fortune left in his family had been exhausted on him alone. When I heard that the two of them had become engaged, I couldn't help but marvel. Was this what people meant by the League of the Wronged? Their marriage, however, was far from happy. Xu Xianzu had originally married Zhao Ning for her family background, only to discover after the wedding that his father-in-law was all show and no substance, a man who held the title of General Zhuo but wielded no real power. As time went on, he grew increasingly neglectful of Zhao Ning. I had never heard of Zhao Ning being a devout Buddhist before. And this was neither a day of worship nor a temple fair. Even a fool could guess why she had come. Zhao Ning sat down beside me and poured herself a cup of tea without so much as a "by your leave." "Sister must be waiting for Lord Xie, is she not?" asking a question to which she already knew the answer. I knew that a verbal sparring match was inevitable today, so I had no intention of holding back. "Sister is certainly well informed," I replied sweetly. "Has she stationed spies outside my house? By any chance, it's quite a long way from my home to yours. You'd have to cross several busy streets. You must have pushed your carriage horses to the brink of exhaustion to get here so quickly." Sister, it's truly flattering to know that sister cares so deeply about me, but I must offer you a word of advice, sister. Instead of wasting so much of your precious time keeping tabs on me, you would do well to spend more time learning how to get along with your husband. I've heard that even after 3 years of marriage, you still haven't managed to win your husband's favor. Oh, right, I almost forgot General Zwa and his wife don't exactly have a harmonious relationship either, do they? How wonderful blood ties are. It seems that sister has not only inherited General Zwa's trembling hands but also his wife's talent for marital discord. Zhao Ning had clearly improved a lot over the past 2 years. Even after I said that, she only gasped sharply. Everyone has been keeping a close eye on Miss Bailing's marriage after all. Among all the young ladies of noble families, you're the only one who hasn't married yet at your age. The Duke of Zhengguo's mansion is an illustrious aristocratic family with strict rules. As someone who's been there, I must remind you, little sister, once you're married, you'd better watch your tongue. You should know that being too talkative is one of the 7 reasons for divorce. If you really annoy others and get repudiated because of this, you'll become the laughingstock of the entire capital. TSK. Listen to this irrelevant response. She must have rehearsed it all the way here. What a buzzkill, total buzzkill. It's like a hero having no place to wield their prowess. No need to trouble yourself, elder sister who's been there. After all, my future mother-in-law passed away early, and my father-in-law is guarding the border pass. Once I marry into the Duke of Zhengguo's mansion, I'll be the mistress of the house, unlike you, who has to outwit and outmaneuver your mother-in-law every day, and also deal with that difficult sister-in-law of yours. Also, haven't you forgotten, elder sister, my marriage was bestowed by His Majesty. It can't be easily annulled. The messy affairs of the Shu family were one of Zhao Ning's sore spots. Whenever she heard people mention them in social gatherings, she would instantly scowl. Not to mention, my tone and expression were both fanning the flames of her anger. Rage flickered across her brows. The resentment of having her dirty laundry aired in public, combined with the frustration of not being able to counter my jabs, made her entire body tremble with agitation. It was as if the moment I had a higher opinion of her was just an illusion. Ji Bailing, what do you have to be so proud of? So what if you're the #1 beauty? You still couldn't get married and ended up being betrothed to a mute. So what if he's a mute? At least my future husband was raised under the influence of the Buddha since childhood and keeps himself pure and disciplined, unlike some people, whose husbands linger in brothels and wine shops all day long. Those courtesans have had their red lips tasted by thousands of men. You'd better take care of your health, elder sister. Ji Bailing, watch me tear your mouth apart today. She couldn't hold it in anymore, she just couldn't. With a loud crash as the teacup shattered on the ground, Zhao Ning stood up from across the table. As for me, I had already stepped back quickly and got ready the moment she finished her last sentence. This wasn't the first time this had happened. When she couldn't win with words, she resorted to violence. I really didn't know whether to call her reckless, or praise her for being truly worthy of being raised in a military general's family. However, there was one thing I had completely miscalculated. In the past, whenever Zhao Ning and I had a catfight, I wouldn't say I had the upper hand, but at the very least, it was a 50-50 draw. But now, as I was pushed into the pond behind me, there was only one thought in my mind. Could it be that getting married actually makes a person stronger? I was pulled out of the water soon enough, but I really suffered a lot, choking on several mouthfuls of water. The water rushing at me from all directions made me close my eyes instinctively. When I came to my senses, I was already on the shore. I lay in the arms of the person who had saved me. Above me, I saw the grey monk's robe he was wearing, the collar slightly unbuttoned from jumping into the water to save me, and his black long hair dripping with water. Wait a minute, since when do monks have hair? In the side room where pilgrims rested temporarily, it was so quiet that you could hear a pin drop. The silence was broken by the little boy named Xiao Ju who followed Xie Qingxian around. Miss Xie, are you feeling unwell? My body was fine, but my heart was not. Ji Bailing, why couldn't you just hold your tongue? You knew perfectly well that Zhao Ning would resort to violence when she couldn't win with words. Why did you have to provoke her? Did this catfight have to happen right here and now? Couldn't you have waited until we got back to the capital? And that Zhao Ning, who ran away as soon as she saw me fall into the water, Just you wait and see how I'll get back at you when we return. But when it all came down to it, it was my own fault. In the heat of the moment, I had completely forgotten that I was at White Horse Temple, and that I was about to meet my future husband for the first time. No, I'm perfectly fine. What a coincidence, really. As soon as I fell into the water, the young master arrived. It was still Xiao Ju who replied. It wasn't a coincidence. The young master and I arrived long ago. When exactly? It should have been around the time you said that lady had worn out several horses, Miss G, so that meant he had heard almost everything. How embarrassing. I had never felt this embarrassed since I could remember. In the carriage heading back to the capital, Xie Qingxian and I sat on opposite sides. He couldn't speak, I didn't know what to say. For all these years since I could talk, this was the first time I had ever experienced the awkwardness of sitting in silence with someone. If I had a choice, I really wished that the mute one at this moment wasn't him, Xie Qingxian, but me. Before we set off back to the capital, Xiao Ju found me. Xiao Ju looked shy, but the words that came out of his mouth were anything but. You see, originally, when we received the news that the young master's marriage had been bestowed by His Majesty, we had planned to head back these past few days anyway. The young master's idea was, since you're leaving today, we could take your carriage back to the capital together, saving us the trouble of having the mansion send someone to pick us up. Miss G, would you mind giving my young master and me a ride? No, absolutely not. Was that huge duke's mansion really short of one carriage to pick them up? You feel sorry for your servants and don't want to trouble them, but who's going to feel sorry for me? I just wanted to be alone on the way back to the capital to digest that rare awkwardness in peace. Of course not. Why would I mind, since the young master and I are already betrothed by imperial decree? It's perfect for us to take my carriage back to the capital together. It was still Xiao Ju who broke the silence in the carriage. Miss G, I follow the young master around all day long and rarely get to talk to anyone. It's such a rare treat to finally have someone to chat with. Please don't mind if I talk too much. No matter how much you talk, can you talk more than me? For the first time in years, the maid who had been by my side since childhood and I were on the same wavelength. Don't worry, no matter how much you talk, you can never talk more than our young lady. For the rest of the journey, Xiao Ju completely took over the conversation. I heard that the capital is extremely prosperous. Is it true that you can eat different snacks for 3 days straight without repeating any? Well, that might be a bit of an exaggeration. 3 days is a stretch, 2 days would be about right. The clothes you're wearing, Miss G, are so beautiful. Do all the young ladies in the capital wear such lovely clothes? You bet they don't. My dress was made by the chief embroideress of the splendid embroidery building. She's arrogant and conceited, ordinary people can't even catch her eye. I was an abandoned baby. The young master found me at the mountain gate of the temple. I've grown up with him in the temple since I was little. Oh, so your life story is actually quite pitiful, Miss G. Are all the young ladies from noble families in the capital as eloquent as you? The carriage that came to a halt saved me. Gazing at the gate of the Duke of Zhengguo's mansion not far away, I let out a long sigh of relief. I finally understood how my parents must have felt when I was Xiao Ju's age. Why do kids have so many questions? As for Xie Qingxian, apart from occasionally pouring tea for Xiao Ju, who had been chattering non-stop the entire way, he didn't say or do anything for the whole journey. What can I say about this man? When he found Xiao Ju, he was just a half-grown boy himself, wasn't he, raising a child alone, acting as both father and mother. He's actually quite kind-hearted. After hearing about my ordeal at White Horse Temple, my parents were distraught. The marriage hasn't even been finalized yet, and the betrothal gifts haven't been sent. What if that young Master Xie goes to His Majesty and asks to call off this marriage? The two of them were so worried that they didn't sleep a wink all night. Father even threatened to write a scathing memorial to impeach both Zhao Ning's husband's family and her maiden family, but before he could take action, something happened to Zhao Ning's husband, Xu Xianzu. He had gotten into a fight with someone at a brothel over a famous courtesan. Whether it was an accident or a moment of blind rage, no one knew, but he pushed the dandy he had been arguing with straight down from the upper floor. That dandy was the only son of 3 generations in his family, watching their only heir end up bedridden for the rest of his life. His family reported the incident directly to the imperial court. If a son is uneducated, it's the father's fault, and when the father isn't around, the father-in-law has to take the blame. Not only was Xu Shenzhou dismissed from his official post, but General Zhuo, his father-in-law, was also implicated and punished by being ordered to stay at home and reflect on his mistakes. Father was so full of pent-up anger that he had nowhere to vent it. He had to take out his frustration on the potted plants on his study desk, ranting and raving at them every day after returning from court, treating them as those two people, Zhao Ning and Xu Shenzhou. Mother, on the other hand, had people keep a close eye on all the comings and goings at the Duke of Zhengguo's mansion, fearing that Xie Qingxian would go to the palace to ask His Majesty to annul the marriage. This anxious and fearful state of affairs finally came to an end 5 days later, with a formal invitation sent over from the Duke of Zhengguo's mansion. What? That young Master Xie is inviting our Lingling to tea at a tea house. Father, who had just returned home, heard the news from Mother, who was already beside herself with excitement. He threw his head back and laughed loudly. The heavens have eyes. Our ancestors are watching over us. Finally, there's someone who isn't scared away by our Lingling's sharp tongue. Young Master Xie is such a fine young man, such a fine young man. This boy is destined for great things in the future. I had no idea if this boy would achieve great things in the future, but I was almost scared to death by the over-the-top behavior of these two. On the day of the meeting, as soon as the rooster crowed, the two of them sneaked into my boudoir before dawn broke. One was wearing a white nightgown, the other a black one, half asleep. I thought I had seen the two underworld judges come to claim me. Linger, get up, Linger. Yep, as soon as they opened their mouths, they sounded even more like them, after fussing over me for 2 whole hours. And reminding me no less than 20 times that I must put on a good show this time and reverse the bad impression I had left on Xie Qingxian. I finally found myself sitting in the carriage, and I wasn't alone. My parents were with me. Father, aren't you supposed to go to court today? No, I'm not. I won't be able to rest easy until I see you and that young Master Xie hit it off. This time, Xie Qingxian didn't bring that little boy named Xiao Ju with him. Instead, he had a stack of paper and a brush placed in front of him. Without that grey monk's robe on, Xie Qingxian looked incredibly pleasing to the eye. No, more precisely, he was more handsome and charming than any of the young masters from noble families I had ever seen. Leaving aside his personal abilities, based solely on his looks and family background if he weren't a mute, and if he had grown up in the capital, young ladies from noble families who admired him would have been as numerous as fish swimming in a river. This marriage would never have fallen to me. But that's life, isn't it? No one is perfect. Take me. For example, I can make people's hearts skip a beat with just one glance, but as soon as I open my mouth, I annoy everyone within earshot. Thinking about it this way, a sense of sympathy between kindred spirits welled up in my heart. Young master, since you invited me here today, I assume you have something you want to say to me. Coincidentally, I also have something I want to say to you. A flicker of surprise crossed Xie Qingxuan's eyes. He nodded and picked up the brush in his hand. Please go first. I took the paper he pushed towards me, unable to hold back a sigh of admiration in my heart. Not only was this man good-looking, but his handwriting was beautiful too. I wonder if you've sent someone to inquire about me these past few days. I'm the kind of person who might talk a lot in daily life. No, scratch that. I don't just talk a lot. I talk super a lot. You know that saying about someone being a chatterbox? Well, that's me. Instead of annoying him later, I might as well lay all my flaws out on the table right now. What if, in the future, Xie Qingxian truly regrets marrying me? I can still proudly tell him, what's wrong? I made it perfectly clear back then. Now you're complaining I'm a chatterbox. What were you doing back then? Xie Qingxian didn't write anything down but gently nodded. I recounted a few typical incidents from my childhood onward, focusing particularly on the part involving Zhao Ning. So that day when you saw Zhao Ning push me into the pond, it was because she had harbored grudges against me before and wanted to mock me, only to be provoked into a rage. During the conversation, I didn't forget to observe Xie Qingxian either, but I don't know if it was because he'd spent too long in the temple. But even his expression was like that of a statue, staring at me without any expression from beginning to end. On the contrary, I kept stumbling several times under his intense gaze. I'm just a talkative, nagging sort of person, sometimes even unreasonable. If your highness finds this unsuitable and wishes to break off the engagement, it might be difficult, but if both our families put our minds to it, I believe there's still a way. Xie Qingxian thought for a moment, then picked up the brush again. After reading the 4 characters "why retreat" on the paper, it was I who was surprised, not retreating. Then why did you call me here, to be honest? Although my parents had hopes for my meeting with Xie Qingxian this time, I personally didn't feel the same way. It was just that, seeing the two of them finally recovering their normal state, I didn't want them to lose sleep again because of my guesses. I could say that I came today with the thought that Xie Qingxian might have second thoughts. But now, what is the purpose of the young master inviting me here today? Drinking tea, just drinking tea, seemingly amused by the expression on my face. He smiled and shook his head, then continued writing. Miss G, genuine and true to herself, very good, genuine, and very good, yes, indeed very good. I now believe what my father said. To see through my endless chatter and perceive my inner beauty, this child will surely achieve great things in the future. Since we got things off our chests, the rest of the time passed very harmoniously between us, even though it was all me asking him to write. It's been a long time since anyone was willing to cooperate with me like this. Of course, I couldn't help but feel delighted. I don't know if it was my mood that rubbed off on him, but Xie Qingxian kept smiling throughout. I ended up talking a bit too much before I realized it. By the time I came to my senses, the sun was already setting, and my parents were still waiting for me at home. After saying goodbye to Xie Qingxian and returning home, sure enough, as soon as I arrived, both of them eagerly gathered around me, knowing from me that Xie Qingxian had no intention of breaking off the engagement and had even arranged a time for their next meeting. My father was so excited he exclaimed he must write to our hometown to tell my grandmother and eldest uncle the wonderful news. Finally, I was going to get married. My mother was more direct. If that's the case, did he mention when they'll exchange betrothal gifts, when he'll come to propose, and when the wedding will be? Me, these past few years, you two must have been suffering terribly over my not being able to get married. Seeing the two of them suddenly change from their previous listlessness, as if experiencing a last flicker of vitality, a thought suddenly arose in my mind. Although I and Xie Qingxian were paired by your majesty's whimsical matchmaking, this random pairing turned out pretty well. I had thought that Xie Qingxian, having been raised alongside the Buddha since childhood, must be a distant and cold person, but I never expected that his actions would be so appropriate and considerate. Every time we met, he never showed any sign of impatience at my chattering. Sometimes, when they notice I've been talking too much, they kindly push the teacup towards me, signaling me to take a sip of water and continue. Every word I said received a response, even if it was just a nod or an expression. He not only often invites me out to play, but also frequently sends things to my home. Among them were the famous embroidery pieces and red hairpins with bracelets that my mother had always longed for, the rare inkstones and uniquely valued paintings of mountains and rivers that my father loved, and even the snacks and desserts I casually mentioned. The thoughtfulness was so intense that even parents felt uneasy. Spirit, tell your parents the truth. Did you cast some kind of curse on that young fifth prince? What kind of curse? Clearly, this child can endure what ordinary people cannot, and will surely achieve great things in the future. I must say, this has been the most comfortable and pleasant period of my life since I came of age. If I hadn't been kidnapped, I think I would have been more at ease. That day, I went early to the private room that Xie Qingxian had reserved to wait for him, but as soon as I entered, someone covered my mouth and nose. When he opened his eyes again, he had been moved to a different place, bound and thrown into a room that seemed to be a tool shed. Xu Xianzu in front of him wore a hideous expression. Miss G, I heard you've been living quite well lately. Just so. Miss G, why don't you try guessing where you are now? I hesitated slightly for a moment. A brothel. How did you know? Xu Xianzu's voice was filled with obvious surprise. That's a good question, Mr. Xu. Can't you smell the fragrance of powder in the air? You're right. Lord Xu has long been frequenting brothels, probably already accustomed to it. No, you can't be called Lord Xu anymore, since you've already been. Shut up. He cut me off. I've ended up like this, thanks to Miss G. False accusation. This is a naked, blatant false accusation. I heard that after Sir Xu lost his official position, Zhao Ning sent him a divorce notice and kicked him out of the house. I've seen divorce letters for wives, but this is the first time I've heard of one for a husband. I can understand that you, Master Shu, might be desperate and grasping at straws, trying to kidnap me for some money, but you can't just go making up lies. This brothel wasn't the one I told you to visit, and that person wasn't the one I told you to push. Though we've had our disagreements in the past, we haven't had any grudges recently, so you can't blame me for this. Hearing my words, Xu Xianzhu was so enraged that he laughed bitterly. I've already found out everything. Originally, there was still some room for reconciliation in that matter. If it weren't for your fiancé Xie Qingxian stepping in and telling the emperor that I must be severely punished, how could I have ended up in this situation? And the Zhao family's punishment was also thanks to your fiancé. Do you think it has anything to do with you? But I truly didn't expect that. At this moment, Miss Ji could still remain so calm and speak with such clarity, truly admirable, as if my panic and incoherent speech would make you let me go. However, when Xu Xianzhu got into trouble, I seemed to have just returned from Baishan Temple, and certainly hadn't clarified things with Xie Qingxuan. So, from that time on, he had already started to be good to me. Sweet and delicious. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't afraid. After all, this was the first time in my life I'd ever been kidnapped, but at the same time, a voice deep inside me told me that I should trust Xie Qingxian. He would definitely find me. So, Mr. Shu, today you've taken me captive. What exactly do you intend to do with me? When you tied me up, didn't you consider the consequences you'd face if someone found out? Mr. Shu, I sincerely advise you. You've already made a mistake, and you must not make it worse. And your family, have you considered how your mother and sister will live if you're punished for this? Ji Bailing, you don't have to scare me. I can't even take care of myself, let alone worry about others. That's an incredibly selfish thing to say. Even someone as battle-hardened as me, someone who had defeated every noble lady in the capital with nothing but a sharp tongue, was at a loss for words for a moment. When a person abandons all sense of shame, they become truly invincible. Seeing that I had fallen silent, Xu Xianzhu let out a cold laugh. You just asked me what I intend to do with you. He let out a series of malicious chuckles, his face contorted into a lewd grin. This place is a brothel, in case you haven't noticed. Now, tell me, what do you think I want to do with you? Rest assured, I've already made a deal with the madam here. Tonight, you'll be my wife, starting tomorrow. You'll hang out your shingle and take clients. Oh, how thoroughly he had planned everything out. As Xu Xianzhu spoke, he took step after step toward me. When there was only a single step between us, he knelt down and grabbed my chin roughly. Among all the dandies I know, quite a few have been pining after Miss Ji. If they found out there's a woman here who looks exactly like the most beautiful woman in the capital, do you think they'd be lining up around the block to have a taste? Ji Bailing, you humiliated me in the street that day. Now, because of you, I've been reduced to a stray dog with nowhere to go. Today, I swear I will ruin you. I'll make you a whore for 1,000 men, a plaything for 10,000. Xu Xianzhu's unfinished threat was drowned out by a deafening crash as the door was kicked open. The wooden door slammed against the ground, sending up a cloud of dust. The figure who stepped into the room, backlit by the light outside, looked like a divine being descending from heaven. In my eyes, my already softened heart gave a violent jolt. Judging by his reaction, Xu Xianzhu was just as stunned as I was. It was not until he was grabbed by the scruff of his neck and hurled onto the pile of hay in the corner that he finally found his voice, muttering in disbelief, Xie Qingxian, how could you be here? It's impossible, absolutely impossible. Xie Qingxian cut me free from my bonds. As soon as I was free, I threw myself into his arms without hesitation. I silently told myself, this was not some cheap attempt to take advantage of Xie Qingxian. It was the fear that I had suppressed with sheer willpower earlier, fear that had exploded the moment I laid eyes on my fiancé, Wu Xie Qingxian. Why did you take so long to get here? I was so scared, so terrified. If you hadn't arrived just in time, I would have. A beautiful woman's tears were enough to break anyone's heart. And at that moment, I looked nothing short of utterly devastated, like a poor victim who had been grievously wronged. Xie Qingxian wrapped his arms around me and patted my back gently, comforting me silently. The men who had followed him into the room did not dare to look at the sight of us embracing. Instead, They turned all their accusatory gazes toward Shu Shenzhou, who was now being pinned face down on the ground. The men restraining Shu Shenzhou must have used brute force. I could even hear a faint cracking sound coming from his body. In this dramatic scene of a hero rescuing his damsel in distress, everyone played their part perfectly, everyone except Shu Shenzhou, who lay on the ground screaming in agony, his face twisted with disbelief. Ji Beiling, you weren't like this just now. That was when I found out the truth. Every time Xie Qingxian had arranged to meet me, he had arrived half an hour early. Thus, from the moment I had been knocked out and abducted by Shu Shenzhou to the moment Xie Qingxian arrived at the tea house, barely any time had passed at all. Xie Qingxian had spotted my family's carriage outside the tea house, but when he went into the private room, he had found me gone. He had immediately guessed that something terrible had happened to me. His suspicions had been confirmed after questioning the tea house owner and the waiters, considering how quiet my life had been lately. The only person I had truly crossed was Zhao Ning. Coupled with the fact that Shu Shenzhou had been the one stirring up trouble behind the scenes, it had not taken Xie Qingxian long to figure out that the two of them were behind my abduction. Thus, Xie Qingxian had sent his men to investigate the recent whereabouts of both Zhao Ning and Shu Shenzhou. They had quickly traced the trail to Shu Shenzhou. It was also a stroke of luck that Xie Qingxian had found me in the second brothel his men had searched. The incident caused quite a stir. Before long, the entire circle of noble families in the capital had heard the story of how Lord Xie Qingxian had flown into a rage to defend the woman he loved. Mother and father were overjoyed. They looked at Xie Qingxian with more affection than they would have lavished on their own son. Despite mother and father repeatedly urging Xie Qingxian not to rush things, he had moved with lightning speed to complete every single wedding procedure, all except the actual wedding ceremony itself. Mother and father had worried about my marriage for so many years. To see everything settled so quickly left them in a daze, as if they were living in a dream. Linger, mother fretted. What if the Duke comes back and finds out that he had no part in arranging this marriage at all except for the final wedding ceremony? Do you think he'll be upset and give you a hard time? Linger, father chimed in, equally anxious. Why do you think the Lord is in such a hurry? Could it be that he doesn't have long to live and wants to father an heir before he dies? Or could it be that he has someone else waiting for him outside and can't wait to bring her into the mansion? To prevent my parents' imaginations from spiraling into even more bizarre territory, I quickly jumped to Xie Qingxian's defense. Have you both forgotten? Xie Qingxian grew up in front of the Buddha since he was a child. What's the most important virtue of a monk? Never telling a lie. But my reassurances did little to ease my parents' lingering anxieties. Mother was one thing, but my well-read father quickly caught on to the flaw in my argument. But Lord Xie isn't a monk, is he? As the wedding day drew near, mother and father were kept so busy with the wedding preparations that they had no time left to dwell on their baseless worries. On the contrary, a new kind of anxiety began to creep into my heart. Xie Qingxian had lived a life of vegetarianism and Buddhist devotion for so many years. Apart from the time he had saved me from drowning and the time he had held me when I was kidnapped, he had always maintained a decorous distance between us. I was, after all, the most famous beauty in the capital. When he was with me, did he never feel the slightest desire for more intimate contact? Once upon a time, even though those noble young masters had been terrified of my sharp tongue, every single one of them had blushed and stolen glances at me whenever they saw me. Could it be that Xie Qingxian was impotent? My fears were completely dispelled on our wedding night, as soon as we finished drinking the nuptial wine. I barely had time to say a word before I was swept off my feet and tumbled onto the bright red wedding bed. The red silk curtains billowed around us. With his actions, Xie Qingxian made it crystal clear that not only was he capable, he was more than capable, far more than capable. By the third time, as he tossed the last of my clothes over the bed curtains and ignored my feeble attempts to push him away, Xie Qingxian leaned down and whispered in my ear, his voice hoarse and rough, Linger. Be good, me. His pronunciation was clumsy, his tone raw, but there was no mistaking it. Those words had come from Xie Qingxian's lips. Thunderous was not a strong enough word to describe the shock that coursed through me. Xie Qingxian, I thought you were a mute. Xie Qingxian did not stop his movements. I never said I was a mute. He was right. The rumors that had leaked from the White Horse Temple had only stated that no one had ever heard Xie Qingxian speak. There was a world of difference between no one has ever heard him speak and he cannot speak. Now that I thought about it, when the emperor had bestowed this marriage upon us, he had said that Xie Qingxian did not talk, not that he could not talk, a single word's difference. And yet it had led to such a colossal misunderstanding. Then why didn't you say anything all this time? Silent meditation. I was practicing the vow of silence. Xie Qingxian's extra story ***. My name is Xie Qingxian. I am the son of Duke Zhenghua and the eldest princess. I should have grown up as a pampered young master of a noble family, yet I spent my childhood in a Buddhist temple. Everyone said it was because I had a profound affinity for Buddhism, but the truth was far more complicated than that. I still remember the day my mother, who had always been so strict with me, called me to her side. Her eyes filled with a softness I had never seen before. "Go," she said. "Go as far away from the capital as you can. I can no longer protect you." And so, I followed that monk named Liaoran, traveling all the way to Jiangnan. Liaoran told me that when he was young, he and my mother had been the closest of friends. Thus, he had agreed to her request to take me away from the capital to keep me safe from danger. Not long after we arrived in Jiangnan, news reached us that my mother had passed away. On the day he received the news, Liaoran locked himself in his room for an entire day. When he finally emerged, he placed his hand on my head and said, "Young lord, you must grow up well. Do not let her sacrifice be in vain." He taught me to read and write, to play the guqin, to paint, to play chess. He was so erudite that he did not seem like a monk at all, but more often than not, he would sit with me and recite Buddhist scriptures, the scripture of rebirth being his favorite. Liaoran's attitude toward me was always strange. Occasionally, a flicker of tenderness would cross his face, but more often than not, he kept me at a distance. That one address, "Young Lord," drew an invisible line between us. It made me acutely aware that he was only raising me because he had been asked to do so, but in my heart, he had long since become both my teacher and my father. When I grew a little older, I began to wonder why Liaoran had said he was taking me away from the capital to avoid danger. Every time I pressed him for answers, he would remain silent, but on his deathbed, I finally learned the truth. It was also then that I understood why, despite being a renowned monk, he had always lived a life of near self-torture. He was atoning for his sins, punishing himself. Before he became a monk, Liaoran had been a dashing young master in the capital. He was born into a noble family that supported the crown prince. He had known my mother since they were children, childhood sweethearts who had loved each other deeply. The crown prince's position on the throne was precarious. He needed to win the support of the powerful Duke Zhenghua's mansion. A marriage alliance was the best way to secure that support, and my mother, who shared the royal bloodline with the crown prince, was the perfect candidate for the union. Caught between his love for my mother and his loyalty to his family, Liaoran had chosen his family. He had stood by and watched as my mother married another man. From that day on, the world gained one more heartbroken soul and one more unhappy couple. Father's mind was set solely on serving the imperial court and defending the borders. To him, women were nothing more than tools for continuing the bloodline. Tormented by inner suffering and subjected to her husband's cold indifference, mother wasted away day by day. Seeing mother like this, Liaoran was consumed by regret, but it was already too late. Later, he renounced his family ties and became a monk. Mother married father for two reasons. First, to secure an alliance with his family, and second, to keep him under surveillance. The current emperor, on the one hand, valued the Duke of Zhenghua's mansion highly and entrusted them with military power. On the other hand, he feared that their growing achievements would overshadow his own and threaten his throne. No matter how many times mother insisted that the Duke of Zhenghua's mansion harbored no rebellious intentions and remained wholeheartedly loyal to the sovereign and the state, she could never dispel the emperor's suspicions. The sense of crisis reached its peak after I was born. The emperor even suspected that mother would turn against him because of me. After giving birth to me, mother's health deteriorated further. She knew full well that once she was gone, I would not survive long in the capital without anyone to protect me. So she entrusted me to the person she trusted most to take me away. That person was Liaoran. Plagued by guilt and worn down by his self-torturous lifestyle, Liaoran's health declined rapidly. When I turned 13, Liaoran passed away too. The day after Liaoran left this world, I found Xiao Ju at the mountain gate of the temple. I firmly believed that the Buddha had sent Xiao Ju to me. Fearing that I would be left all alone in the world, even though everyone around me insisted that Xiao Ju was too weak to live long, I still took him in and raised him. It was also on that day that I began to practice the vow of silence. Liaoran had told me that the vow of silence was the most difficult to uphold, yet it could dispel obstacles, ward off misfortune, and cleanse one of sin. I prayed to the Buddha greedily, vowing to uphold the silence for 10 years if it meant granting Mother and Liaoran a happy and fulfilling next life. Perhaps the emperor finally realized that father harbored no disloyal intentions. When I turned 20, he finally let go of his suspicions toward my father and at the same time, ordered me to return to the capital. Tormented by guilt over mother's fate, the emperor treated me with extraordinary kindness and leniency. The Duke of Zhengguo's mansion was vast and desolate. Rather than living there in lonely seclusion, I preferred to stay in the small courtyard at Whitehorse Temple, and there I stayed, for 3 years. I never expected that the emperor would bestow a marriage upon me. I had always thought that all young ladies from noble families were like mother, ladylike, never smiling too broadly, always acting with poise and decorum, every word and gesture governed by strict rules. I never imagined that the emperor would choose someone like her for me, that year. In the backyard of Whitehorse Temple, I hid behind a tree and watched my future wife bicker with another woman, then come to blows. In the end, she was no match for her rival and was pushed into the pond, and not before yanking out a handful of the other woman's hair as she fell into the water. At that moment, I thought to myself, this marriage might not be so bad after all. With such a lively, vibrant person by my side, at the very least, I would never be bored again.